Hello and welcome back to the Talking Ship podcast, brought to you by Ship My Plants. We created the Ship My Plants marketplace as a way to supplement other garden centers, other online plant sellers, and basically mom and propagators, people who are small-time sellers that are selling out of their own home, a way to find more customers to sell more plants. NetPS is part of this venture, and pretty soon I'm going to introduce our guest, James Kohut. But, take a second to, maybe close your eyes and think that. Imagine if you listened to that speaker or friend or colleague who told you in 2008 that your business needs to be active on social media, but you didn't really listen until around 2016 and had missed the boat. Or imagine being one of the first YouTubers consistently building that content library for the last 10 to 15 years. Where would you be now? Well, this is another one of those opportunities. Consumers are learning to shop on marketplaces where they can find a larger selection of products in one place. Niche marketplaces are the future of online retail, and until now, the consumer horticulture industry did not have a marketplace platform for the plant industry, by the plant industry, where people can buy and sell plants and plant care goods at lower commission fees than traditional non-niched marketplaces. This is where your current and increasingly future customers are and will be shopping. So I'd like to introduce Mr. James Kohut from Northscaping, who is the founder and creator of the NetPS Plant Finder database. James, welcome to the Talking Ship podcast.
Hey, it's good to be on here, Rich. I'm glad to be a part of this in more ways than one.
James is a partner in Ship My Plants, and he is integral in what we do. And we've been working together on this for a little over a year now together. But how and when did you first start the Plant Finder database?
Well, we have a really interesting story. We started with a completely different concept back in 2004, where we tried to create a website for northern gardeners and home landscapers. And the idea was to give them the kind of information that they could use that wasn't California centric and it wasn't that was relevant to northern gardeners. And in doing so, one of the things that we created was a plant database. We thought it was important that northern gardeners could be able to find plants that were appropriate to them. And we ended up amassing this plant database that grew and grew and grew. And ironically, the concepts of the website never really took off. But we had this database. And so we talked to a couple of garden centers and said, what can we do with this? How else can we look at utilizing this database? Can you use it? How would you use it? What can you do with it? And they guided us to where we are today, where we effectively make it accessible to them on their website. So the whole point of the Plant Finder is, in this day and age, every retailer needs to have their products represented on their website, whatever they sell, whether they sell online or not. They still need to have their products on their website. It's to the point where if a consumer sees that something's not on their website, they assume that it's not sold. And the challenge with plants is that there's 200,000 plus plants in commerce right now. Even the average garden center carries 2,000 or 3,000 different varieties of plants. And those change by hundreds every year as new plants are introduced and they switch out their selections for the year. That's a heck of a task to a garden center to keep that updated in terms of photograph, in terms of the plant information, the plant descriptions. All of this was things that garden centers didn't have the time to do. And interestingly enough, we realized that if we did it once, we could leverage it through software and through technology to everybody, so that we could create one database to rule them all, so to speak, and it would be leveraged by each of the garden centers, who would select the plants that they carry and have a plant finder that goes onto their website. And that was one of the keys for us, was to make sure that we backed out of this. We were dealing with the garden centers and the nurseries, but to their end customers who were using this was an exchange of information between the garden center and their customers. So we made sure that it was integrated into their website, that it contained only the plants that they carried, and that the information was relevant to them. And it's been quite the growing experience. And we started off in 2004. I think we went live with 2,500 plants in that database. And today, in approximately 1 month in 2024, we're going to be releasing up to are bringing the database up to 35,000 plants is our best guess right now. So it's still a long ways from the 200,000 plus that we think are out there being sold, but it starts to have a good representation of all the plants that are out there. And so this is the way, that's how we started this. This is the way for garden centers to get their plants onto their website. And what has evolved? Obviously, we've been doing this since NetPS went live in 2007, and with our first garden centers coming on board shortly after that. Since that time, it's been an interesting evolution, and it's curious that in 2007, e-commerce wasn't even a blip on the radar. No garden centers were talking about e-commerce, and here we are today, where e-commerce is this big elephant in the room, and it's forcing a shift in the way that retailers sell, and it's a force caused by the way consumers buy. And we've had to respond to that. One of the things that we've done is make the database accessible remotely so that people can actually put it onto their online stores. We call that the NetPS Plus service. We made it so that they can run it through a point of sale system. They can put the information that's contained in the database into their online stores. All of this is an evolution of where we're going. And so Ship My Plants, here's the story with Ship My Plants and us. We were looking at how we best participate in e-commerce. Given that our primary focus at the start was to use the web and websites to draw people into the store, e-commerce has introduced an alternate way of selling where the customers don't have to go into the store. They can have it shipped right to their door. How do we play a role in that? And we looked at that, and the answer was not for us to get into e-commerce directly, but rather to leverage the assets that we had built up over all these years, the 120,000 plus plant photographs, the 35,000 plus plants that are entered in the database, and how do we make this accessible into the e-commerce realm? We didn't want to play directly in e-commerce. So two avenues. One, support those who are in e-commerce with the NetPS Plus service. They need the information, the content. We can provide that for them. The other way was to actually be a part of something that could offer garden centers a way into e-commerce. And that's where Ship My Plants comes in, and where our system has also proved to be quite useful in making the plant information and the photographs accessible to a much, much broader audience in a marketplace. We made it as easy as it was possible to make it, where we did most of the integration work, and where managing their plants is literally going into an administrative back end and clicking on the plants that they carry, and that's it. That's all you really have to do. There's more to the Plant Finder. There's more it can do, but it supports minimal intervention to do what it does. And we tried to carry that philosophy into Ship My Plants, so that if someone is apprehensive about setting up an online store because they don't want to be gathering photographs, they don't want to be researching plant information and writing catchy plant descriptions, we've already done that. And it's not just that we've done that. It's not just that Ship My Plants benefits from all that. It's one click of a button. So to add a plant as a product into your store, you click one button. It will import the photographs. It will import the information. It'll import the descriptions, the correct plant name, botanical name, common name. All of that is in there, and it's ready to go. As soon as you've clicked on that, all you have to do is add the pieces of information that you provide, like sizing and pricing, SKUs, that kind of thing. But it's ready to go. And yet you don't have to do that. You can edit it from there. You can supplement photos. You can replace photos if you want, if you have a better one. You can change the plant information. You can customize it to whatever degree you want. But the starting point is so simple and fast. And I wanted to make it clear that that was a driver for us in the Plant Finder tool, and that is a driver for us in Ship My Plants as well, to make it fast and easy. To have 120,000 catalog plant photographs, we can go into our system and we can pull a photograph. I can tell you how many photographs of amber maple we have, and if someone needs a photograph of the fruit in red in an amber maple, I can find that photograph for you in an instant. And that's one of the advantages of building things together with software. And again, that's another thing that drew me to Ship My Plants, is that I see the potential of a marketplace leveraging our assets in a very, very strong way.
Well, it's actually very humbling that you're part of the team, because you're someone that's known throughout our industry, more specifically on the garden center end of things, because you've got so many of these big time garden centers utilizing the database and using it to increase the traffic on their website and to improve the consumer experience that their customers are able to have on their website locally and maybe even beyond, obviously with NetPS Plus. But I know when I first approached you with this idea, we talked about how other people and other companies tried to tackle the problem, so to speak, and didn't quite have the right solution to the problem. And so it was very encouraging to me and to the rest of the team that we already had Ship My Plants, Maggie Vega and Clint Albin, that you believed in it in that way. So obviously here we are. We've been actively building this thing. We're live. We're operating. We've got several different sellers. We're touching all the different corners of the United States. And for the listeners and viewers, James, can you tell everybody where you're located?
No, we're in Canada. We're just a stone's throw north of the border, but in a nice, really cold place that's beautiful to look at, but dress warmly. But yeah, we've always viewed the North American market as an entity, and that's actually how it behaves. The plants are the same. Um, the climates are interesting in North America if you look at them, because the West Coast is kind of homogeneous all the way from Vancouver to Seattle to San Francisco, down to LA. That's a single climate area. It doesn't follow the north south. It follows almost an east west type allocation. So Alberta is very much like Colorado, and we are very connected to Minnesota here, and likewise the eastern parts are similar climates as well. So it's better to represent the plants climatically, and that's always been one of the challenges for us: is how do we create a universal plant database that works on a continent of this size and this scale? Is the plants that someone sells in Maine are very different from the plants that someone sells in Los Angeles, and yet some of them are the same. And it comes down to understanding which plants they sell the same way, which plants they sell differently, and which plants are completely unique. And natives are a big push right now in our world, and I can assure you that the native plants that we are growing in the database in the deserts of California and Arizona are completely different from the native plants that matter in New Hampshire and Vermont and Massachusetts. And it's coming down to realizing, to learning on our part, what are the important natives? Why are they important? How do they support pollinators and all that? And understanding them, and then going out and tackling all of those, because that's probably the thing we do the most right now, is take photographs. That's the driver for us. That's one thing we did, which I think it was a good decision we made back in 2007 when we started this, and we said we will never enter a plant into this database unless it has at least one indicative photograph. People were doing that at the time. They were putting photo not available, and you'll still go onto someone's e-commerce website and you'll see picture not available or a blank in there, and it horrifies me personally, because consumers are visual, and that's grown. That's only grown as the internet's grown, and they will only respond so much to a description of a plant or someone telling them what it looks like or what its attributes are or what its advantages are. They need a picture, and they need a good picture, and they need pictures that indicate the primary attributes of the plant. They need pictures that show what it looks like in fall, what it looks like when it's mature. So when they buy a tree that's a spindly sapling with no leaves on it in spring because it's bare root or something, they need to know what it's going to look like 10, 20 years down the road, and be able to visualize that so that they're buying the future. And that's another thing that the internet does well, and that the Plant Finder does well, is show them all of this potential. But it means taking a ton of photographs, and that's how we ended up with 120,000 plus photographs.
Well, and I like what you say about how plants regionally are different, and you're talking about natives and everything. But we've been giving this famous example in our sales pitch in Ship My Plants, is that there's multiple plant records from a category standpoint within the database. For example, the famous example that we keep using is lantana. How you can utilize that as an annual in the northern climate, more in like the central part of America, maybe like Tennessee, we're talking about it as a perennial. And then you get even further south into Florida, and that thing is operating as a shrub. Uh, Cactus and succulents, how, cactus and succulents to people in the Southwest, those are their landscape plants. But cactus and succulents to people, in New York State, that's a house plant to them. So I think it's brilliant how you built the database with all of that in mind. And obviously, the garden centers, who are the forefront of consumer horticulture, recognize that. And my next question is, how many garden centers utilize the Plant Finder database?
Right now, we have around 250 garden centers, clients. They're nurseries, garden centers, mostly on the retail side, some with split retail and wholesale operations, which is very interesting for what we do, because it caters to two slightly different um, aspects of the business, and they have slightly different needs of the assets that we provide. And sort of a middle ground on that is commercial. There's a number of garden centers or plant retailers that have a significant commercial um, business, which would be selling to landscapers, contractors, municipalities, people that buy plants in bulk, um, that uh, that are looking for plants that are hardy, that are cost effective, low maintenance, high pollution tolerance, that kind of thing. It's part of what we've had to cater and build in here and recognize. I just came back from a trip to San Francisco and Sacramento, and in going to Sacramento, one of the things I always like to do is look at the street trees, because they tell me a lot about what's important to people there.
Mm.
I'll go to Chicago and I'll find autumn blaze maple on the streets and ginkgos and I kind of and honey locusts, and you kind of know what the meat and potatoes plants are there, the trees. In Sacramento, it's completely different, just completely different. And I'm looking at um, plane trees, the Mexican plane tree, which is very important there, and the Chinese pistachio. And besides getting some really good photographs, it made me look at our photo pool and say, wow, we must have spent a bit too much time looking at away from some of these areas and not completely understanding, because we didn't have the best photograph in the world. Now we do. I'm going to stand on the photograph we took, but that's part of understanding what matters to each area. And there's two evolutions for us. One is what matters to each area. So as we expand into California, as we expand into Texas and Louisiana and Florida, the plants are different and the way they behave is different. Cordyline in
Yeah.
in Indiana is quite different from a cordyline in Orlando, and how they grow differently, how they use them in the landscape. It's a house plant in one part of the country. It's a common landscape plant accent in the garden in another part of the country, and we have to be able to represent that. But it's also looking at trends like pollinator friendly plants, bee friendly plants. This isn't just about which plants are good for bees. It crosses into the natives and makes it so that we have to understand that there's certain plants, for example, in Florida, that are pollinator friendly, that are important there, that wouldn't work in other parts of the country. So recognizing that, it's quite the task balancing it. So yeah, the lantana, the butterfly bush, the zonal geraniums have all been eye openers to us as we look at the bigger picture of this continent.
Well, it's brilliant because, I don't think there's anybody that's approached it in this way. And, you know, another question I'd have is, who do you have agreements with from a plant branding standpoint to legally photograph and catalog their plants? Because I know when it comes to branding and when it comes to, copyrights, people are very protective, and that's the reason that they do those things. So who are you able to work with? And is it everybody? Is it all the big brands? I mean, I know the answer to the question. I'm just tossing you the softball.
Well, this is an undervalued issue in this industry, is that people don't realize that it's illegal. Not everybody realizes it's illegal to go on Google Images and pull an image and take it and put it on your website, put it in your online store, or put it in your plant finder or whatever, build it yourself. Eventually you may get lucky. And if you get lucky, then no one's going to call you out on it. But somebody eventually will come and say, that's my photograph. I am going to sue you for copyright violation. And I can honestly say we have personally been sued for copyright violation because of what one of our clients did. And we have had clients come to us and say, I'm tired of this whole copyright issue. Um, just take it off our hands, make it legal for us, whatever you do here, so that we don't have to fuss over the legality of the photographs that we use. This comes to another policy that we have been working towards ever since the beginning, which is to own the photographs. We take most of our photographs. Of those 120,000 photographs, well over 99% are ours. We clicked the picture, which means we own the photograph, which means we have the rights to it, which means when someone uses the Plant Finder tool, no one is going to come to them and say, that's my photograph, I'm going to sue you. They can't. We're the owners of the photographs, and we can protect our client base. And that is a value that we have brought to Ship My Plants as well, so that any seller on Ship My Plants who is using the NetPS database and the photographs that come with it is protected from copyright infringement, because we own the photographs and we took those photographs. It's a daunting challenge, but the rewards of that are huge. And I can't say enough that how people often find out too late that they can't just take images off Google Images, because it usually starts with the lawsuit.
Well, I had a conversation this morning right before we were on together with a guy who is a Google Ads expert, but he comes from the consumer horticulture industry, and he actually used to work at Walter's Gardens, and he personally introduced a handful of the proven winner perennials that he found the sports. He found a sport for a salvia in a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, and he also would just walk the fields at Walter's and look for variations. And for the listeners and viewers that don't know what a sport is, it's essentially a mutation of a plant, and that has its own unique characteristics that could potentially be bred and turned into a whole nother cultivar of that, of a plant. And it was interesting that, the way that he talked about the protection and what it goes into the branding of all these plants. And it was really cool to talk to him, for me, and a Google Ads guy, that also, it's kind of like talking to you when it comes to the database of like, wow, this guy actually understands consumer horticulture, which is really valuable in this. But I don't know if we've really explained it well enough, and you were touching on it, how the NetPS Plant Finder database is integrated into the Ship My Plants marketplace, so that our sellers, and then, I explained to him exactly this, that, on the back end, all of our sellers have a dashboard, and they're able to create their own individual product listings. Cause he said, how are they responsible to add their own photos and do all this? And I said, they can, but, we've made it really easy because of NetPS Plant Finder database. They can go through, and it's, the vast majority of the plants that are sold in today's consumer horticulture are already on there, with no fear of copyright infringement for the photography, for all the cultural information, and so forth. So it's definitely one of the secret sauce ingredients, although we're not really making it a secret, because it's a selling point as to why, this is a little bit different and better than if you're going to sell on some other marketplaces. You're responsible, and then you're also responsible to either make sure you take your own photographs, and then obviously that's extra work, or if you're trying to find photos from the internet, you better not be, stealing someone else's intellectual property, because especially with today's AI, they're going to find you. So it's pretty cool that we have that. And, we mentioned the word omni-channel. James, in your best definition, what is omni-channel?
So omni-channel marketing or omni-channel selling, this gets very close to our approach that we have taken with our clients, and especially in e-commerce. That first and foremost, in our opinion, from having done this for 15 plus years, it's still critical that every single retailer, not just plant retailer, but retailer in the world, has to have their products represented on their website. It doesn't matter if they sell them on their website or not. They have to have them there. That people expect to go to a website, to browse, to shop, to pre-shop, to do research, to look at, get ideas, inspiration. They have to be able to do that. If they don't find that on your website, they're gone. How do we balance this with selling? So some garden centers are jumping headlong into e-commerce. Allsips is a good example of someone who's boldly gone into e-commerce and has learned and has pioneered e-commerce in this industry. It's a tricky industry to sell online. Um, Other garden centers we've talked to say, I don't know, I tried it and it just, it was expensive. It was this, it was that. They give a number of reasons for looking at this. Um, and then we've got other garden centers of clients of ours who are committed to e-commerce, who are in it for the long run. All our NetPS Plus clients, for example, who are using it mostly in online stores. And we got some garden centers who say, I'm too small. I just can't get into e-commerce. Um, we look at all of this perspective and say, how do we find something that fits everyone's needs? So we've got the plant finder. We got that part taken care of, that we can put their plants onto their website and make them searchable by their customers to do the pre-shopping part of it. But what about buying online? We've said we're not going to get into e-commerce directly. So if you're getting into e-commerce directly, good, we'll support you. But if you're not, how about this marketplace concept? What if I love thinking about Ship My Plants like a farmer's market? We have a wonderful farmer's market here in our town. We're sort of in a small town on the lake that has this beautiful canopy, and every summer, every Wednesday, they bring in a bunch of vendors from around probably 100 miles around to sell under this one canopy, under this one tent. They all have their own stores. They all sell directly or to other retailers, etc. But they all come under this one banner that people flock to. It's one of the most popular things in this town for people to come to that farmer's market and to shop, whether it be crafts or fresh veggies or fruits or baking or whatever, that they can get it all under one roof, and it draws them in. This is how I've envisioned the Ship My Plants marketplace, is that it's one thing to sell on your own online store and through your website, and that's important because you already have a bond with your customers through that website and through your store and through your physical store. It's an extension of that physical store. But what if people were drawn into this other one area here, and they know they can get plants here because that's what this market, it's not a farmer's market, it's a plant market. And you need to be selling in this market as well. And we were looking at this and saying, okay, how's the positioning in all this? You have an online store. Maybe you're tempted to say, well, why would I need to sell online in another way? I already have an online store. Or maybe this is a way for me to get into online selling. The way omni-channel marketing or selling works is that you don't pick and choose. You do as many as you can. That today's consumers have gotten to the point where they can shop in person, they can shop on their smartphones, they can shop online on their computers, they can phone in orders. There's so many ways now to buy. And instead of picking a winner, which I remember back in the early days of e-commerce, that was the thinking. Is e-commerce going to win? Is e-commerce going to take over and eliminate in-store shopping? Of course not. It's going to supplement in-store shopping. And that's the whole idea of omni-channel marketing, is that you take as many venues as you can, as many channels to sell, and sell in as many of them as you can. And the beauty of Ship My Plants as a marketplace is that it is just like our farmers market here. Someone is doing the marketing to draw all these people in here. They've already created the environment that's conducive to shopping and that creates the expectation that this is a good place to get, in our case here in town, fresh baking or fresh fruits and vegetables, or in the case of Ship My Plants, plants. And it's a necessity that every garden center be represented in there, as well as having their own online stores, as well as having a plant finder or a plant library for information on their websites. It's taking multiple angles and multiple approaches to reach a customer base. And Ship My Plants delivers on that really well. There are other opportunities with Ship My Plants, which I think are critical. So, for example, a smaller garden center or nursery who cannot afford to get into e-commerce, who is scared of making a large commitment, Ship My Plants is such an easy way for them to get into e-commerce, to dip their feet, as I like to call it, and start experimenting with e-commerce on a small scale and benefit from that marketplace. So they're not doing this on their website. They're not the ones responsible for drawing the people into here. There's already a draw. It's already happening here. And And so by creating this momentum of this marketplace, it can let the big garden centers who already have online stores supplement their channels. One more channel to sell, one more way to sell to your customers, and it can let the smaller people in as an entry point. That's omni-channel to me. Omni-channel means as many ways as you can reach your customer that you can feasibly attain, do it.
Yeah, I mean, today's consumers have more ways to purchase than ever before. I mean, a retailer has to reach customers through as many of these channels as they can. The other way that, garden centers can actually utilize Ship My Plants just as a way to find more customers in their local market, as we're advertising direct to consumers, but they can utilize Ship My Plants a lot like a restaurant utilizes DoorDash or Uber Eats, and they can only they don't have to put their entire product listing on there. They could put 5 plants on there if they want to. Maybe they have too many autumn blaze maples and they're in the Chicago market and they're trying to find another outlet for that. Well, they can set the zip codes that they deliver to and put their delivery prices on their own truck. So it's utilizing their own inventory. It's not utilizing, you got to buy it from my nursery or anything like that. This isn't not an instead of. Put it on your website as a link. Hey, did you know we're on Ship My Plants? Click on it and it takes you to your Ship My Plant store, and then they can do in-store pickup or they can do local delivery. And the beauty about the local focus with this is by geolocation, you can set the zip codes that you deliver to or don't. And then if a customer searches for that and you don't service those zip codes, then you don't show up at all. So the consumer experience is never interrupted by them trying to buy something that they, can't buy. But, people can choose their entry level. It's bite-sized or it could be a big plan. So it's really easy to become a seller. The barrier of entry to try e-commerce is very, very small. And they can, if they sign up for a year, they can change their listings in and out. You have your petunias on there in spring, and you put your perennials on there, and then you put your fall mums on there, whatever it is. You get a certain amount of listings that you get. And I would say we've made it almost impossible to not do. It's awesome to have the NetPS Plant Finder database involved, and also to have James Kohut as a team member. We meet every Friday. We talk about strategy. James is more than just a database builder. He's a marketing expert and very passionate about that. And I think that's been another huge benefit to having you on this team. But we're starting to run out of time. So I kind of just want to, close with saying, go to shipmyplants.com. If you're a seller, if you're a potential seller, go ahead and sign up. The smallest package is $1 for 5 listings, or book a demo with us and we'll walk you through. We'll show you the back end with the dashboard, how you can quickly load your products in using the NetPS Plant Finder database and get you started selling today. And thank you, everybody. Again, this has been the Talking Ship podcast by Ship My Plants. I'm Rich Christakis, your host. And thank you, James Kohut, for being on the show today. And I'll actually be seeing you in about an hour on our weekly team meeting.
Sounds like fun. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks. Bye.